name is Kristen Stilt. I'm a professor of law at Harvard Law School, where I'm also the faculty director of the Animal Law and Policy program. I work on comparative law, international law, religion in the law, and so through all those areas, I now infuse the question of animal law, so it appears throughout all of those different substantive areas. So when we think about comparative law, we try to understand how are things done differently in different places around the world, and then how can different jurisdictions learn from one another. In the comparative law field for animal law, we actually know very little about most parts of the world. Even the countries that are most important in terms of high consuming populations, so India or China, or countries that produce tremendous amounts of animal products. We don't know a lot about what goes on, what are the laws, and how are the laws interpreted, and how are they enforced. So we have a lot of work to do, even just to figure out what's going on around the world in terms of the most important questions, where there are significant gaps in coverage, and indeed where are the most egregious violations of animal rights around the world. We simply don't have good information about that. There's really only one organization that aims to govern what happens to animals in general, the World Animal Health Organization. And it's not something we even have a good sense of in terms of how are these standards produced, how are they used in countries, they're not self-executing, a country has to adopt them, how are they modified, what's an ethnography of how this organization works. It's the most important organization for animal welfare, but we really know very little about it. So I think a lot more needs to be done to understand, is it possibly an avenue we can use to push for greater reforms? But I'd say there's even a deeper, more fundamental question in international animal law, which is, how do we develop a truly universal system of international animal law, where shared norms can kind of percolate up from different countries and cultures around some set of general norms and expectations? I think that's a very promising avenue, but it's one that hasn't happened yet. And I think scholars can do a lot to provide support, intellectual, theoretical support for that concept and help bring it to life. So my interest in animal law came in a fairly roundabout way. I was living in Cairo while I was doing my PhD research, and I was seeking volunteer opportunities, and I wanted to work with animals, like in a shelter. In Cairo, animal issues are front and center. They're in the streets, cats, dogs, horses, donkeys. They're living in the streets, they're dying in the streets. It's something that it hits you right away. So I wanted to help. But at that time, there was no organization, there was no shelter. Instead, I met a group of Egyptians who were getting one started. So I got involved with them, and together we built the first animal shelter. The up-close and in-person way in which we interacted with animals, picking them up from the street when they had been hit by a car, or rushing them to the vet. There was a closeness there was a physicality to it that was very meaningful to me at the time and really imprinted on me how individually important each one of these animals are. It's easy, I think, in the field of animal law to gain distance from that, but that up-close and person relationship with dozens and dozens of cats and dogs whom we brought into the shelter and cared for and knew by name, I think that was something that reminded me what it is that I love about animals and indeed who they are to me. So I think it's really important in this field to always be reminded of who they are and why they're doing this, and to never lose that contact with them and that very close personal relationship that we can have. So today there's been so far a little bit of talk about methodology and the use of ethnography and even storytelling. And for the book project I'm working on now about animal welfare debates in the halal industry, I'm taking a very different approach from what a lawyer historian would normally do. And I'm putting myself really in the middle of the story, in the sense that I describe what it's like to walk through a slaughterhouse in Amman, Jordan, or to walk through a slaughterhouse in Australia, or to have other kinds of very intense personal experiences that are part of the research for this project. Interviewing an asylum seeker in the Netherlands, for example, interviewing a whistleblower on a live export ship. And so I've realized through this process that we really do need to be up close with the things we're writing about, to experience them firsthand and to relate them in a way. Because most readers will not have walked through a slaughterhouse. And so that description can be done in a fairly sterile way, or it can be done in a very descriptive way, which is what I'm trying to do in terms of the smell, the temperature, what it felt like, what it looked like, in a very almost storytelling kind of way. Talking about that today with some people made me really reaffirm that this is something that we're missing, and that I think it has a lot of potential for communicating those experiences to the reader.